Have you ever felt that there's something inside you? Not exactly a thought, not exactly an emotion, but a space that no one notices, even though it's always there. It's as if a part of you has stopped in time, while the rest of your life continues running by. You work, talk, laugh, post, reply, produce, but deep down, there's a pause, an absence, a silent warning that you try to ignore because you're not quite sure what it means. And perhaps that's the point. You feel it, but you don't understand it. You move forward, but you don't find yourself. This emptiness doesn't knock you down, but it accompanies you. It doesn't scream, but it presses against you. It doesn't stop you from living, but it prevents you from feeling like you're truly living. It's an inner place where nothing fits, where everything seems a little distant, a little shallow, a little, this isn't it. And the more you try to fill it with movement, the more it reveals itself in the moment when everything becomes still. But today, for a few moments, you won't be running. Today, this space will have a voice, not to scare you, but to finally show you what you left behind while trying to be strong, functional, agreeable, resilient, anything but vulnerable. And here's the real challenge. Are you ready to face the possibility that what's missing isn't outside, but something you've stopped carrying inside? Are you willing to find out why nothing you do seems enough, even when everyone says you're doing well? Because this is the moment. It's time to stop running away and start listening. Perhaps you've experienced times when everything seemed to be going according to plan. You fulfill your commitments, deliver results, maintain conversations, demonstrate maturity, and yet you feel an absence you can't explain. It's as if there's a gap between what you show and what you truly experience inside. A subtle, yet constant difference between what you give to the world and what's left for you when it's all over. This feeling can appear during small breaks in the day, on the way home, when the routine slows down, when you finally lie down and notice a weight that doesn't belong to physical tiredness. It's emotional tiredness, the result of a life in which you needed to function even when you weren't well, needed to smile when you were broken, needed to show strength when you just wanted to rest within someone who understood you. And there's no exaggeration in that. This discomfort is merely an echo of past experiences, of pains kept hidden for years, of moments when you had no one to listen, no one to comfort you, no one to see what was really happening inside you. It's the overload of so many versions you've created to protect yourself. The calm version, the responsible version, the capable version, the version that learns not to bother, that learns not to ask, that learns not to feel too high so as not to be judged. Over time, these versions end up occupying spaces that belong to their essence, and you end up distancing yourself from important parts of yourself without realizing it. Spontaneous enthusiasm, genuine desire, forgotten sensitivity, the need to be cared for instead of always caring. And here's the truth that almost no one tells you. This emptiness doesn't appear suddenly. It is built slowly, in the moments when you hid what you felt to avoid conflict, in the days when you accepted crumbs because you thought you didn't deserve more, in the conversations where you remained silent so as not to seem fragile, in the times when you minimized your pain so as not to worry anyone. It is small sacrifices, constant and silent, that gradually take you away from yourself. And when there's finally too much space left, you call it emptiness. But in reality, it's just the result of a life in which you had to distance yourself from your own truth in order to survive. Before understanding where all this began, it's necessary to see the mechanism that brought you here. It's not a defect, it's not a flaw, it's not an inability. It's an automatic internal process created long before you realized you were getting lost. Now is the time to look at this mechanism clearly, because it explains not only what you feel, but how you learn to disconnect from yourself while continuing to live for others. When you constantly adjust to situations that put pressure on you, you create an invisible habit, that of abandoning parts of yourself so that the environment doesn't reject you. And this habit, even unintentionally, selects which emotions can appear and which need to be kept to preserve the stability around you. Over time, you don't realize that you've begun to build a kind of internal map where certain regions have been marked as forbidden, dangerous, or inconvenient. It is in these regions that the interrupted versions of yourself are stored, versions that wanted to feel, express themselves, ask for help, show vulnerability, but were interrupted before completing their natural movement. These frozen parts continue to exist, but they no longer participate in your adult life. They carry old perceptions, reactions that belong to another context, and continue to wait for a moment of safety that never comes. Meanwhile, the rest of you moves on, completing tasks, maintaining relationships, solving problems, making decisions. But this evolution doesn't reach the pieces that have been held back in the past. The difference in pace between what is moving forward and what remains still creates a kind of internal gap, a feeling that something has been left behind, even when everything seems to be working outwardly. This void doesn't manifest as immediate pain. It appears as neutrality, as indifference, as that feeling of being present but emotionally distant from one's own experience. It's a state where you observe life unfolding, but feel as if you're one step behind yourself, as if some kind of internal signal is missing that should connect you to the moment. This state of suspension, of subtle absence, is what you interpret as emptiness. Emptiness doesn't represent a lack of affection, success, or external validation. It represents the exact point where you disconnected from parts of yourself to protect yourself. And this disconnection doesn't happen all at once. It's built up slowly. Each time you suppress a legitimate need, each time you choose to be what others expect, not what you feel. With each emotional renunciation, your identity loses a little depth until you stop recognizing nuances of yourself that were once natural. Emptiness is not a space to be filled. It is an internal territory that has ceased to be inhabited, a territory where their deepest emotions were interrupted before they could mature. And as long as these parts remain isolated, any external attempt to fill that space will be temporary, because what's missing isn't something from the outside, but someone from within. You. That's how it works. It's not magic, it's not fragility, it's not a defect. It's the result of such a gradual internal distancing that you only notice it when the feeling becomes strong enough to grab your attention. The journey back doesn't begin with grand decisions or external changes. It starts when you allow yourself to revisit the moments when you began to drift away from yourself. Not to blame the past, but to recognize where your voice was silenced, where your natural impulse was interrupted, where your emotions learned to hide to keep you safe. It's a path that requires honest investigation, identifying when you started asking for less than you needed, when you accepted being ignored so as not to lose someone, when you decided that your needs were inconvenient, when you realized that feeling too much caused discomfort in others. Each of these situations left a part of you trapped the moment you learned to shrink away. By revisiting these points, you discover fragments that still carry fear, shame, or weariness, fragments that were never allowed to mature because they were silenced before completing their own emotional cycle. And the process consists of welcoming these parts without rushing them, without forcing them to overcome, without treating them as ruins. They are pieces of you waiting for continuity. This journey is not linear because it involves confronting emotions that you have learned to avoid. Sometimes, you'll find yourself trying to escape the process itself. Other times, you'll feel resistance when something old starts to resurface. This is expected. These internal barriers were built to protect you. Removing them requires patience, but each step forward gives you back something that was missing. The ability to feel without fear, the presence that once seemed fragmented, and the emotional clarity that disappeared when you started living on autopilot. Over time, feelings that had been dormant begin to stir again. Sensations that seem distant gain color, depth, and context, and you begin to notice that the emptiness doesn't diminish because you fill it, but because you reintegrate it. The courage needed for this process lies not in facing great pain, but in allowing yourself to truly listen to yourself. It is in this space of listening that you recover the presence you lost, the spontaneity that froze, and the essence that remained hidden somewhere in your history. And it is precisely this reconnection that restores depth, meaning, and truth to what you feel. The turning point happens when you understand that the emptiness doesn't stem from what was missing in your life, but from what remains suspended within you. It functions like an inverted map. It doesn't point to where you should go, but reveals where you've ceased to be emotionally present. It's like a territorial marker indicating that your identity was interrupted at some point, not by choice, but by necessity. This emptiness appears precisely because you transformed faster than your emotions could keep up. As you grew up, you developed skills, competencies, and responsibilities, but some parts of you remain trapped in old rules, where feeling meant taking risks, and this imbalance creates an internal division. One part of you lives in the present, while another remains obeying emotional commands that no longer make sense over time. This division becomes so natural that you confuse adaptation with personality. You believe you are reserved, when in reality, you have learned to restrain yourself. He thinks he's too independent, when in reality, he hasn't learned to be supported. You think you don't feel it as much, when in reality, you've become accustomed to shutting off emotions that once scared you, and this silent distortion shapes its way of existing. You begin to relate to others through protection, not presence. He makes decisions guided by fear of loss, not by genuine desire. Approach people carefully, but never close enough for them to see who you really are. Not out of coldness, but because parts of them still believe that being seen is dangerous. Emptiness is an indicator of this. It arises when there is a difference between what you experience and what you truly feel, between what you demonstrate and what you would like to express, between what the world knows and what has been kept hidden in the deep layers of your history. And here's the revelation that completely changes your perception. Emptiness doesn't point to something you never had. It points to something you've stopped accessing, for impulses that have been interrupted, needs that never learned to circulate, sensitivities that have lost permission to exist. It's a reminder that there's untouched emotional territory waiting for you. And strange as it may seem, this feeling is not an enemy. It's a door that opened not to weaken you, but to let you know that the time has come to recover what you thought you had lost forever. Pay close attention to your daily routine. You complete tasks, resolve demands, and show up where you need to. But at the end of the day, you feel like you've done it all out of obligation and nothing for yourself. You talk, you respond, you participate, but you feel that something prevents any exchange from going beyond the surface. It's as if your relationships only touch the shell, while what exists inside remains inaccessible. You achieve small victories, receive praise, complete projects, but the feeling of satisfaction evaporates too quickly, as if nothing sticks, as if each achievement were made of paper. You try to relax, try to disconnect, try to breathe, but you wake up the next day with the same emotional exhaustion, as if the rest hadn't reached the place it truly needed to. And it doesn't stop there. You realize that you strive to be present, but your body arrives at places before your essence does. He's surrounded by people, but lives as if he were behind a glass window. Someone who makes decisions, but rarely feels they chose something out of desire, almost always out of duty, convenience, or habit. Someone who accumulates moments, but few of them truly resonate with them. These patterns don't happen by chance. They point to a way of working that keeps you active, but disconnected. They show that their actions continue, but their emotions do not follow suit. You move, but you don't get involved. It advances on the outside, while on the inside it remains trapped in a state that does not renew itself. It's like living in two different time periods: the body's time, which follows routine, and the soul's time, which has stopped at some point where you lost yourself. And the emptiness forms precisely in that interval, in the space between what you do and what you truly feel, between the movement that continues and the version of you that remained frozen in the past, waiting to be caught up. This is the axis of the void, a life unfolding before your eyes, while your inner experience remains anchored in a past you have yet to revisit. Everything we have discussed so far converges on a single essential truth. The emptiness you feel is not a reflection of a lack of something external, nor is it the result of an insufficient life. He's a silent reminder that there are parts of you that have never stopped waiting for you. It's not the world that's far away. It is you who lost access to inner fragments that were left behind while trying to adjust, mature too quickly, or survive situations that demanded more than you could offer at the time. Emptiness doesn't speak to what you lack. He talks about what still belongs to you, but he was interrupted along the way. And each feeling of incompleteness is a call to return, a request for you to recover layers that remain alive, only hidden beneath years of adaptation and silence. The central theme is simple yet profound. It's not the absence of the world that hurts you. It's the absence of yourself in the most essential parts of your own story. Every behavior you exhibit today, every defense mechanism, every automatic reaction, every silence, every distance, carries roots that extend far beyond the present moment. These are responses that arose in contexts that demanded survival, not authenticity. Stories you didn't choose, but had to carry because, at the time, they were the only way to go on. These stories have shaped the way you perceive the world, how you relate to others, how you protect yourself, and how you allow or deny access to your emotions. They taught what was safe to feel, what needed to be hidden, what should be swallowed to maintain bonds, to avoid conflict, to avoid losing important people. Even if you've already left that environment, the emotional memory continues to function as if everything was still happening. That's why certain patterns persist, not because you are like that, but because your history is still active within you. Each of your reactions is a vestige of something that once made sense, even if it no longer does today. And by recognizing this, you stop seeing yourself as someone broken and start seeing yourself as someone who carries marks, adaptations, lessons learned, and scars that were necessary to get through what you've been through. Now, before any change, there's a step only you can take. Look at yourself honestly, without rushing and without judgment. Not to find someone to blame, but to understand what still demands space within you. Ask yourself calmly, what do you repeat even when you don't mean to? What feelings do you try to silence whenever they start to surface? What patterns have followed you for years and seem to guide you, even when you try to do things differently? What are you hiding because you fear that if you show it, it won't be accepted? And what inside you is still waiting to be recognized, heard, validated? These questions do not require immediate answers. They open doors, and each door reveals a fragment of itself that was left in the dark, waiting for its own light. Looking at these parts is not a sign of weakness. It's the beginning of reconciliation with everything you distanced yourself from in order to survive. And this reconciliation is what transforms the emptiness of absence into a space for reunion. Nothing changes until you recognize what's really going on inside. And acknowledging it doesn't hurt because it exposes, it hurts because it liberates. This is the inner turning point, to realize that there is more to you to be discovered than you imagined. When you understand what's happening inside yourself, your perspective on others changes. He realizes that often people don't react to the present moment, but to the scars they carry. Someone who shuts themselves off is trying to protect themselves. Those who speak loudly try not to disappear. Those who avoid closeness have learned that trust hurts. These attitudes don't justify everything, but they show that there's a story behind every gesture. And this opens up space for an empathy that arises from understanding, not from idealization. You realize that not everything is directed at you. Each person faces silent struggles that don't show on the surface. Sometimes what reaches you is just a reflection of something that the other person is unable to process. This internal change doesn't negate your limits. It simply prevents you from taking on responsibilities that aren't yours. And at the same time, it makes your relationships lighter, more conscious, and less reactive. Ultimately, each person carries within them inner regions left silent for long periods. Entire parts remain dormant, awaiting a simple gesture of acceptance. Sometimes this manifests as an inexplicable weariness, other times as a subtle emptiness that simply begs to be noticed. None of this signifies weakness. It is a plea to return to oneself. At many moments, subtle signs emerge amidst the routine. a forgotten fragment of memory, a desire to breathe more calmly, a strange urge to slow down. All these movements point inward, indicating paths that have not yet been traveled. Allow yourself to wander through these inner corridors. Don't hide impulses that arise without warning. Touch memories that still hold power, even buried beneath layers of haste and survival. If some interior space seems too large, don't treat it as a lack thereof. Consider it available ground for reconstruction, fertile ground for new gestures, new sensations, and versions of yourself that have not yet had a chance to fully exist. When this movement happens, what previously seemed like a lack transforms into direction, a silent invitation to reclaim one's own body, one's own history, one's own presence, and gradually, the silence stops hurting and begins to reveal the way back home. If something has sparked a movement within you, pass that message along, not for reach or statistics, but so that others realize they are not alone in this silence that no one talks about. Sometimes, a phrase spoken at the right moment can change entire trajectories, and you could be the link that starts that new beginning for someone.